All right, guys. So our next guest in this series will be Anthony Moore. Anthony, so this webinar series has been focused on just developing a personal brand that will lead to success in ag law, and you've done that beautifully in our community. So will you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm a fifth generation native of Custer County. I grew up in Clinton. Both my parents graduated from Clinton. My grandparents all grew up in Western Oklahoma, kind of throughout, Butler, Sentinel, Colony, some of that area. And so, one of the ways that really inspired me to kind of be the success that hopefully I'm trying to, is knowing that, I had something to live up to. I didn't, I really tried to avoid causing trouble in high school and things like that, because I knew that when I walked into places, people knew who I was and knew who I belonged to, and I didn't want to disappoint my parents and grandparents, because I knew that they'd worked hard for what they had, and to build that name. My granddad was a stickler about you're born with your name and a handshake, and it's up to you what those are worth. He told me that 1,000 times if he told me once, and all that to say that integrity was really important to him, and so he really pushed that on me. And so I wanted to make sure that people knew that, hey, if Anthony Moore says something, then I can take it to the bank, because he's not going to lie to me. He's going to tell me his word's as good as his bond. And, my granddad was kind of one of those spit in the handshake sort of guys. He didn't need a written contract, which is funny for a lawyer to say. But so I graduated from Clinton in 2000, went to Oklahoma Christian in Edmond, got a governmental and legal studies degree, kind of a political science pre-law. Law school at Oklahoma City University, graduated in 2007. I didn't really have a specialty in law school. I didn't know, I went to law school to be in the DA's office, and that'll come into play in a minute. We'll talk about that. But I didn't really have a specialty. I really loved oil and gas law. When I took my favorite class at OCU was oil and gas law. And then after that was probably the business side of it, the business law parts, corporations, and some of the other things. So, I graduated in 07. I did about a year and a half, 2 years of oil and gas landman work doing title. I really enjoyed it a lot. After that, I did 2 years of, when the oil and gas market crashed, I went and did 2 years of medical malpractice insurance defense work, working for hospitals, doctors, nurses. I didn't enjoy that very much. I didn't go to med school on purpose. And I really, the environment was not one that was, not all environments work for everyone. That one didn't work well for me. It's really the only time I'm happy with what I was doing. So I left that, went back to the landman work, oil and gas picked back up. My wife was finishing her doctorate in physical therapy, and oil and gas went back down. And she said, you went to law school to be in the DA's office, why don't you start looking there? And so we did, and God was fortunate. God opened a door, and we were able to move back home in 2013. Which is where I've always wanted to be, especially as soon as we started having, our first child was born in 2011, and I wanted to be back home. I wanted to raise them out here. So we moved back in 2013. I was in the DA's office for 2.5 years, and I just loved the work. It was fantastic. And you really felt like you were doing good for people. And then in 2015, I went out and started in private practice, doing really focusing on oil and gas and real property. So anything involving the land, surface, and then minerals underneath it. Those are my specialties. I deal with a lot of oil and gas side agreements, pipeline events, farm leases, hunting leases, sales transactions, things that involve either selling the oil and gas or minerals or selling the land. And then I do a lot of, just general civil litigation, estate planning, some things like that. But my primary focus is oil and gas litigation and real property issues. I really have loved it. I went out on my own for a very short time in 2019 and got an offer that I couldn't refuse to join with Christensen Law Group. I'm a partner there now and have been with them for almost 2 years now. And it's just been a phenomenal blessing, because I get to do what I always wanted to do and what I was doing while I was on my own, but under their umbrella, and I don't have to deal with the day-to-day management side of it it's not my favorite part of it. There's two types of lawyers. There's lawyers who don't like to be businessmen, and there's businessmen that kind of happen to be a lawyer also. I just don't like the billing side and messing with all that junk. And so the management side's not my favorite. So I enjoy just being able to practice law and letting someone else deal with those headaches.
Right. Okay, so for a guy in his 30s, you've already built up quite the reputation in Western Oklahoma. So what have you felt like you've done to just kind of gain the respect of our community?
Well, first of all, a few things about that question. I'm a guy in my 30s for just a little bit longer. I'm starting to feel older and older, and I can tell you, you being in college doesn't make me feel any younger because I remember when you were born. I was in your, as you probably know, I was in your dad's very first eighth grade science class at Clinton Middle School years ago. I won't say how many years ago, but I like being a guy in my 30s for now. As far as, building up a reputation for success, that that means a lot to me. I mean, but it all goes to the way I was raised. I give a lot of credit to my parents and my faith for that because I truly knew that when I walked into a restaurant or a store, I didn't want people to go, man, that's that one that, he really messed it up for that family. I didn't want to be the black sheep. I didn't want to be the one that sullied the reputation of my parents and grandparents because I knew how hard they had worked to know that if my dad told you something, you could take it to the bank. If my granddad promised you something, he would make it happen, even if it hurt him. He always did right by people. He was in business, and his business partner, quite frankly, took advantage of him. And he didn't sue him. He didn't go after him because he just didn't think that was the right thing to do. And he, my dad has always said, listen, if I die broke, but my tombstone says, here lies the last of the good old boys, so be it. It's just how he is. He's one of those guys. He'll die broke before he does something dishonest to try to make money. And so that really meant a lot to me. And it really, I mean, that sticks with me every day. And so I don't know, that's a very humbling question, but the most important thing to me about being successful, and we can define success a number of different ways. I don't think, I don't think success is based on, you know, bank account. That's not how I value success. I believe that there is such a thing as enough, and I don't try. Quite frankly, I could make a lot more money doing what I do if I charged people for every, all the time I spend on things. But listen, I get it. I know how hard farmers work. I know how hard that everyone in Western Oklahoma works for what they have, and so I just, I see the bill on the city office and I see what I do the same thing, and I'm way lower than them. But that's fine because I can walk into a restaurant or the grocery store or church and hold my head high and know that treating people the right way, the way I want to be treated. And I think that's really what it all comes down to is people know that when they come to me for legal help, I'm going to make sure that they get good value for the service provided. And that's really my key focus is making sure that number one, they want to come back to me because they're happy with what I did, but also they feel like I charged them the right amount. And it doesn't all come down to money, but sometimes I'll do something for somebody. They're like, send me a bill. And I said, no, I'm not sending you a bill on that. I didn't really do anything for you. And a lot of people expect to get a bill. But all it takes is one or two times where you send a bill out and people didn't expect it. And that gets around. Western Oklahoma is a small community. And matters more to me that people can know, hey, if he send me a bill, it's because he worked on it and he did something good for me and he helped me. And if I don't confer a benefit on somebody, I'm just not going to send them a bill. It's just not worth it for whatever, a couple $100 you might make. I can lay my head on my pillow at night and sleep well knowing I treated people the right way.
And that's super awesome. And like you said earlier, like you are so dependent on those relationships in your community. And so to further those, are you a part of any organizations or anything like that?
Yes, ever since we moved back, I give Western Oklahoma a lot of credit for where I'm at. I've had incredible opportunities. I've had job offers in DC, overseas, I mean, you name it. I could have moved anywhere and been anything because of, quite frankly, the foundation Western Oklahoma laid for me, but also some of those relationships from Western Oklahoma are what opened doors to give me these other opportunities. So I'm ever since in 2013, I'm involved in everything I can be a part of. I'm a past president of the Custer County Bar Association. I'm a trustee for the Clinton Public School Foundation. I was vice president of Lions Club of Clinton and was supposed to be president right now, but with me deciding to be in this campaign, someone graciously decided to take my spot, so I didn't have that on my plate at the same time. I was a board member at the Cordell Christian Home nursing home, and so ever since I moved back, I try to find ways to get back. I'm in Rotary at Weatherford, and so I'm a part of a lot of groups. And my wife kind of, honestly, is she's a physical therapist, and she was working on someone, and they said, "So Anthony's going to be on our board. I'm so excited." And she said, "He's what?" And the girl said, text me real fast and said, "I think I just got you in trouble. I'm so sorry." And my wife said, "Get off of now, you're on another one." And not to mention I'm a deacon at our church, which is probably my most favorite job, in my involvement with our congregation at church. And so I'm in charge of youth ministry. And so I get to spend a lot of time with kids, which I love because, I remember those people who spent a lot of time with me. A lot of people don't know this, but I have a Bible minor from Oklahoma Christian. And if I hadn't gone to law school, I was going to go into youth ministry. And a lot of people think that's a very diverse, two paths to choose from. But, really, my faith is a big part of who I am as an attorney too. So it's really not that far apart to me. I think that faith aspect is really one of the ways that you make those relationships with people. They know where you stand, and you're not afraid to speak up for what's right. And your word is good. And if you tell people, "Hey, I'm going to do really good for you," and if you don't send them a bill, they really respect that. And I think you can, I think that make it into a quote, but sometimes the bill that you don't send gets you more work than any bill you'll ever send. So.
And that's super awesome. And you talked to me a lot about your faith the first time that we ever really talked law, and that stuck out so big for me. But the last time we met, you also said something that also totally motivated me to keep on pursuing law. And you said that lawyers in this area are starting to retire, and young law school graduates need to come back out here and take their spots and just fill that gap. So can you speak a little about that?
Sure. So, I mean, if it's, so get outside of the criminal world. Okay. There's a lot of, most of the people under 45 years old or younger out here are primarily criminal defense attorneys. Now they do some other things, but that's their primary focus is criminal defense, his office, or frankly, still criminal defense in like the Oklahoma Indigent Defense OID's office, or there's another one in Weatherford, legal aid. The DA's office, legal aid, and OIDs have almost everyone that's under 45 years old in them. Now you expand outside of that to private practices, the criminal defense lawyers have everyone else who's under 45. And then there's a gap. We have a very interesting breakdown. Like the under 45 crowd is mostly that. Now there's a few that do family law and some other things, but really outside of family law, criminal defense, there's not anyone between 45 and really there's a gap. I don't know how many attorneys there are between 45 and 65 out here. There's just not many. So there's a big gap where there's no attorneys at all. You look at Elk City has one attorney under the age of 65. And it's incredible. And honestly, I think if I don't like to say, again, my word is good, so I'm not going to tell you something's fact if I don't know it, but I think there's not an attorney under the age of 72 in Elk City, besides one that doesn't, and he does criminal defense. And so there's this big vacuum. We're losing some of these. One thing that I didn't mention when I do real estate stuff is title work, and so you look through abstracts and do abstract and things like that. I'm one of like two people. The other one's in my office too, right here, that do title opinions that live in Western Oklahoma, and all of on this side of Yukon that I know of. Besides being in Woodward or Altus, we're the only ones in the middle part of Western Oklahoma that do it. And the next youngest ones to us that do that regularly is like 72, 74 years old. So there's going to be that, and you talk about, well, how big a deal is that? Every transaction, every land sale that goes through a bank, whether it's a house, a farm, you name it. They're going to want a title opinion. Every bank, think about every bank in Western Oklahoma, every land sale, somebody's going to have to do that. And I take that back. I lied. There's one guy who's probably about 45 in Weatherford who does a lot. But really, I mean, 3 attorneys out here, they can't do all those. There's no way. I mean, that, and you can form an entire practice just on that one area, because when you get those title opinions, that can spin off into many other things. And so, it's just retention is key. And that's one of the things I've been preaching in Clinton and during this campaign, even in Weatherford, Elk City. We've got to keep our best and brightest. We've got to show our kids. And I say that, I know I'm talking to college students like you, but you're still a kid to me and always will be, that you can make incredible living out here. And let's say that you come back and you make $80,000 out here in Western Oklahoma. Well, I could be in Edmond and I could make 160, right? But what's the cost of that house in Edmond? What's the cost of your gas driving downtown back and forth in Edmond? What's the cost of going out? I lived in Edmond. I know what it was like. I was there 13 years. I know what the gas bill's like. I know what the electric bill's like. I know what the food, the food's more expensive, the gas more expensive. I mean, there's all this stuff that you've got to factor in, and property taxes and things like that. You can't beat Western Oklahoma. Our cost of living is second to none. It's really incredible.
Yes. And you have kind of preached to me that coming back here is like a good idea, and you've sold me on it. So I would love to come back here and practice. So for you,
I've got an office for you. You just tell me when.
That's awesome. And you told me from the very beginning, you were super passionate about returning home to practice, but has that been challenging for you?
It's challenging in the fact that to some people, you'll always be that, that little boy that was at the golf course, or that little boy that was running around with his granddad or whatever. And so that's the difficult part is people understanding, hey, I might be 30 years younger than you, but that doesn't mean I'm not a really good attorney. One of the other hard parts right now, especially, is, all these attorneys that are, I don't want to say near retirement, but I don't know how else to say it. These guys that are at the end of their career, I don't want to step on their toes. I mean, I could sit here and name 10 attorneys that are over 70 out here that I respect so much. They were friends of my grandparents. They've been friends of my family forever. There's no way that if, the to me and says, hey, we're with this law firm, do you think he's getting too old to do it? I'm not ever going to tell him that, because I know, and this goes to that integrity thing. One day I'm going to be the 70-year-old lawyer, and I don't want some young punk coming in and saying, hey, oh, he's over the hill, he's done, he's antiquated, he doesn't know what he's doing anymore. And so, I tell people, listen, stick, don't leave because of age, stick with them. And when they retire and you want to look at somebody else, come here, and I'll be happy to take your business and earn your business and keep it. Yeah. And I said, but I want you to be loyal to that person who's been loyal to you. And that's a tough thing, because we all know that attorneys kind of feel like when you have a client, you feel like it's yours, but that's not the way the law works. The client decides who their attorney is. And quite frankly, out here, you'll learn very quickly, you practicing someday, you may love, I'm using my granddad's name because that's my go-to, Joe Smith. You may love Joe Smith, but he may go to this attorney for will and guess, and this attorney for his will, and this attorney for something else. And you have to be okay with that, because otherwise, you can't feel like you ever own a client. They're not yours. They're not something they get to pick. You are theirs. They get to pick you, but you don't get to pick them. And so you just kind of have to, again, it all goes back to integrity and treating people the way you want to be treated. So the tough part about moving back is getting over that. I know how young he's, so much younger than me. He's, I don't want to go ask his opinion on something. He doesn't need to be. And some of it's, hey, I don't want him to know my business, because his family knows my family. But once people realize, hey, because I'll go out to eat dinner with my wife, right? And she's a physical therapist, and people will see her at the hospital with, she can't tell me who her patients are. I've got client confidentiality. I can't tell her who I work with. And people come up and be like, oh, I didn't know that you went with her, and start talking. And we're like, and they say, well, you guys know that I see both of you, right? And we're like, no, I can't talk about it. We do now, but and so once they realize, hey, he really takes that seriously, and he keeps confidential my private business, that matters a lot. Because I'll have people come up and start talking about business stuff in front of people, and I'm like, let's not talk about this publicly, because I don't feel comfortable doing that, and it's not nobody else's business what your business is. And so you earn respect when you show respect to people, and whether they have an estate that's worth $1 million or $1,000 or anywhere in between, you treat them all the same, and you'll earn people's respect really quickly. But that's the hardest part moving back, is getting over that. Oh, you were just a snotty nosed boy. I remember when you were running around your the school, and you're running that same thing, so.
Okay, well, I will definitely keep that in mind. But something I for sure wanted to point out to everyone is, so if you haven't seen his signs everywhere in Clinton, Weatherford, Elk City, wherever, Anthony is currently running for state house. So could you just tell us a little bit about how you kind of got that political direction going?
So I told you I was a political science major, excuse me, in college, but I always teased that I was the least political science major there was, because I hated politics. And most of the reason I hate politics is still true. I feel like a lot of people talk about what they're going to do, and I'm not a talk about it. I'm a put up or shut up kind of person. And that's what, I remember my dad my whole life said, hey, I said, I'm going to go win a state championship, and and he get out there and show me, a kind of a put up or shut up deal. And so I did a little backstory here. I did a semester in DC my senior year of college, and we lived right on the hill. We were 4.5 blocks from the Capitol building. I mean, I loved it. It was so neat. It was a great experience, very eye-opening for a small farm, small Western Oklahoma boy. Went to a small private college, with like 2,500 people on the whole campus. And then all of a sudden I'm in DC, and there were 41 political science majors. As you can imagine how that went. It was 2000 and the fall of 2003. And so luckily it wasn't an election year or anything, but there was one TV. Back then you couldn't watch TV on your phone very easily, and it's fall. So of course, and that's football. And 40 people would be huddled around this 50-inch TV, one of those big box type TVs, watching C-SPAN or CNN, and I would literally take 3 trains to get to Virginia to watch. We're OSU fans in my family. We to watch where OSU Posse Club met at this restaurant out in sports bar type place out in Virginia. So I'd go out there on Saturdays by myself to go sit watch football with people who wanted to watch football. And it was funny. They all thought it was hilarious that, here's this 21-year-old coming out to hang out with all these older people that graduated from OSU, or had OSU ties or whatever. The OU alumni actually met in the same place, and the Texas alumni met in the same place. So it was nice because I got some of those Southern people, because my entire time in DC, I walked 4 miles a day, 2 miles both ways. And like 2 people smiled in 4 months. And I was, and I asked both of them where they were from. One was from Texas and one was from Oklahoma. It was funny, but it's just a different way of life up there. So all that to say, all these political science nerds that I'd made fun of, I was like, oh, I'm not a political science guy. And then I moved back. And like I said, it's all been about helping. It's all been about giving back, making this place better, wanting to make it a place where we don't lose our best and brightest. They want to come back here. They say, hey, I have an offer to work at a downtown Oklahoma City law firm, and that's all good and well, but I think I can make an impact in Western Oklahoma. I think I can really, I really want to move back. And, one of my saddest stories that I've learned during this time is one of my friends who graduated a year behind me. He had 3 sisters, and his parents told all 4 of them, who are all very successful, smart, get out here and never come back. And that broke my heart, because that's not what Western Oklahoma is about. That's not the Western Oklahoma I know and love. And I don't want that to be anybody's mentality. Like I know that we're not going to retain everyone. People are going to get jobs. You get an incredible job to work in Austin, Texas. That's, a niche in what what you do. Go succeed in it. I want you to be proud. And then when you go there, I want you to say, hey, Western Oklahoma prepared me. And I'm ready because of Western Oklahoma. But I don't want to lose all of those. I don't want to, I'm tired of losing 90%. I want to keep 50%. I want one out of every two that go and be successful. I want them to be back here being successful and raising their family out here. And so that's really what drew me to this. People ask me, hey, I really think you should think about running. And I said, no. I this, but we have 3 kids, 9, 7, and 3-year-old at home. I said, my wife will absolutely shoot me if she'd ever let do this. I can't even think about it. And finally, actually Senator Brent Howard, said it, and he and his wife were talking. I forgot to mention, I was past president of the Chamber of Commerce last year. And so I was chamber president, so that we have a banquet every year and the president puts that on. So it was my banquet. We're done. And Brent and Jennifer, Senator Brent Howard and his wife, Jennifer, are talking to Rachel and I. And he said, hey, I know you're looking for somebody to run for this. Have you found somebody good to run? And I said, no. He said, quit trying to find the guy and be the guy. And that just, that's my mantra, put up or shut up. It's kind of what he said. And I said, well, you don't have to convince me. You have to convince her, and kind of put it off on Rachel. And she said, well, I'm not completely opposed to that idea. I'd have to know more about it. And I was in shock. And so we started talking a lot. We went and had dinner with Brent and Jenner. Dinner with Mike Nelly Sanders. Mike Sanders just finished his 12-year term. He'd been in for 12 years from Kingfisher. And they did it with small kids. The reason we went and met with Mike and Nelly, when Mike took office, his oldest son was 2 days old. They had a 2-day-old when he started this thing. So I said, okay, if they can do it with a 2-day-old, and then they had another one while he was serving, we might be able to do it. So let's go talk with them. And so we did. And on the way home from that dinner, my wife, I'm an attorney, so 100%, I'm easily black or white, 100% or zero, right? She's all gray. She's all down the middle. And I just told her, I said, hey, this is one of those deals you can't be 99% on, because that day that you have that 1%, because, my wife is my number one. I said, the day that you hit that 1% and you say, I don't want you to do it, I said, I'll quit that day. I'll write my resignation letter. I'll send it to the governor and tell him I'm it. And so I don't want to do that. I don't want to let people down, because that would really be hard on me, but I will let the world down if it means keeping my word, keeping my vows to you and being there for you first above everyone else. And so on the way home from that dinner, she said, Anthony, we came to this earth to serve, not to be served. And you have an opportunity to serve 40,000 people in a capacity that we never I never wanted. I never wanted that. But it just seemed like God kept opening these doors, and I kept saying no and kind of pushing it shut. And I've I'm still in my 30s, for a few more years, but I've learned that the biggest problems I've ever had in my life are when I keep saying no to things that God keeps trying to push in front of me. And so I quit shutting, I kept pushing the doors shut, and I realized I got that, spider sense feeling in the back. I've done before, and I remember that this hurts in the end. This really doesn't feel good when you fight God. And so I don't pretend to know God's thoughts or ideas. He's way bigger than me. But when those doors keep opening, things keep pushing you away, I truly believe it's for a reason. And so finally we said yes. I announced my campaign September of last year, and we're 11 days away, and I'm very ready to be done 14 months in. But I've talked a lot there, but I never thought I would be here. It was never my path. I wasn't the kid who grew up wanting to be president of the United States. And I still don't want to be president of the United States, but I'm excited for the opportunity to serve a lot of really great people in Western Oklahoma.
Yeah, that is awesome. And my favorite thing about you is how much you're willing to serve our community. So I commend you for that. But so for my last statement or question, I guess, if you had one piece of advice for law grads looking to return to their rural community, what would that be?
Uh, don't be afraid to fail. Sometimes you have to figure out what you don't want to do to figure out what you do. Um, you know, the medical malpractice insurance defense thing. I did it for 2 years, and you'd walk in, and there were like 9 stacks, 4 inches tall of medical records. And and this is, I'm showing my age here, but this was before computerized records, so a lot of it was handwritten, and you know how doctors write, you couldn't read it. And then when you finally figured out what you thought the word might be, not even mean, but be, you try to finally figure, and then you'd have to look in I had a medical dictionary right there next to me. And you'd go through, try to decipher what it said and then look up 4 of the words in the sentence. And it was awful. I just hated it. And I was already married at that point. My wife was pregnant with our oldest. And she said, Anthony, do you realize that you get sick to your stomach every Sunday night after we get home we had small group for our church every Sunday night. And I got to thinking about it, and I did. Like I slept great Friday night, Saturday night, and the rest of the week I slept terrible. And it's because I just hated what I did. I hated going into work. It had a physical impact on me. I gained a ton of weight, and I mean, it literally affected my body and my mind. Just doing something I wasn't meant to do. Find what you're meant to do, and don't be afraid to experiment with that. As far as like, every once in a while I take a case that's outside of my comfort zone, and sometimes I'm like, hey, I really love that. And, for example, quiet titles. That's a weird thing that a lot of people that outside the law have no idea what that means. But if you own property or minerals, and there's something that, there's a discrepancy, somebody died 50 years ago and they didn't do everything just right, you can do kind of a quiet title is a nice little catch-all that kind of clears everything up. If you're going to sell, if you're going to sell your house, but someone has this weird claim that might say that they own something, but you don't know where they're at or can't find them, you can publish in the newspaper 3 times and wait 42 days and then have a judge say, nope, they don't have any right, title, and interest, and then you can sell it free and clear. And so I did one of those, and I was like, what is this? Well, I think last year I did 24 of them. I love it, and so don't be afraid to, don't, now here's the kicker. That first one I took, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't charge very much because I spent a lot of time just trying to learn it. You can't pass that on to somebody. You can't research for 20 hours case law and bill somebody, 20 hours worth of research. And there's actually some rules of professional conduct that say you can't do that. You probably are aware of, but it just, don't be afraid to try new things. Find out what you like. You might be surprised that you like something you didn't think you would. The other thing is, do it. I'm gonna tell you, for all the things I talk about my grandfather, my Grammy always said, you do the right thing the right way for the right reason. If one of those three is off, the whole thing's wrong. So it doesn't matter if you do the right thing the right way, but if your reason's wrong, if the reason you're doing it's wrong, it's not going to work out. And so I kind of put everything through that filter. And I try to make sure that I always do the right thing the right way, the right reason. And if you do that, um, just remember that when you come home in Western Oklahoma, you're going to see those people that rural anywhere, rural, um, rural America. That guy that you send that bill to for the probate or the quiet title or the lawsuit or whatever it is, you're going to see him. You're going to see him at the restaurant on Sunday after church. You might see him at church, and you want to be able to look him in the eye and shake their hand and know that you did right by them. And listen, you're not going to make everyone happy. Don't, this is, law is not any different than anywhere else in the world. You will not make everyone happy. There will be people that are mad at you. I could probably think of a few that don't like me for whatever reason. But the reality is, just if you always know that you do things the right way, you can go to bed at night and say, listen, I know that that person's upset at me, maybe because the result was not good for them. But if you do things the right way, they can't help but respect you. And that's my thing. I know some people, quite frankly, in this campaign, I know people aren't. I know I have good friends of mine that I know are not going to vote for me for whatever reason. Maybe it's a different opinion, but the thing I love about it is they know that I respect them and I've earned their respect. Um, and that's how we're not DC. That we're not. That's how we act out here. We don't have to agree with everyone. Some of my closest friends I completely disagree with about politics or religion or whatever else, but we can still sit down and go eat lunch together and have great conversation. And I challenge myself with these tough conversations, and I'm not afraid to continue to grow and expand. Don't be afraid to always always keep learning. Don't ever get stuck in a rut where you think you know everything, because that's got to be a boring way to live. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I don't know that I'm quite, when I look at what these questions are about and what you're doing, uh, I'm quite the status level to meet these standards. But very humbled that you asked me, and you're such a sweetheart, and I couldn't thank you enough.
Well, thank you so much for being on this little webinar series. I'm sure I'll be reaching out to you with more questions and just
Good.
advice, but I appreciate you so much.
I'm going to say one more thing. I know you'll learn you don't give an attorney open mic. The best part about coming to Western Oklahoma is, all these 70-year-old lawyers I've been talking about, I can call any one of them right now and say, hey, I've got this weird case I've never dealt with before. Give me some advice, and they'll do it. And they might, they know that someone that came to me has obviously picked me over them. It might even be somebody they used to represent. They don't care. They will help. The great part is out here, you have this great support system. Even if you're not in a firm of other attorneys, you can be out on your own. There are 4 or 5 lawyers that I could text right now and say, hey, I'm doing this new thing. Do you have any advice? And they'll say, hey, let me send you what I've done on that, and give you somewhere to start from. And everyone's willing to help each other. And that's a key out here. We take care of each other. It's a small, tight knit community. There's not a ton of attorneys out here like there are. Oklahoma City, you can throw a rock into a crowd and hit an attorney pretty easy. Out here, there's only 20 or 25 of us, and in all of Western Oklahoma, and we take care of each other and look out for each other and try to help each other every way we can.
That is super awesome. And like I said, I appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much. And if you ever need anything, all you have to do is call.
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much, Anthony. Talk to you later.
You're welcome.
Bye.